Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Silhouette Secrets Plus, and I am back with another step-by-step video tutorial for you. Last week I shared this one on a peekaboo cutout calendar. Make sure to check out the video description below for that one, or the card above. There's a little button above my head that you can push and go to that tutorial. I showed that creation step by step. It is so fun to be able to get into the Silhouette Studio software and create unique designs. So today I'm going to share with you one that has been popular for the last couple of years. It is a layered calendar. So we're going to take that technique that I shared last week. We're just going to use the same tools, but change it up a little bit. So you can create all kinds of these little desktop calendars for yourself, for your house, for your office, or for gifts or different things like that. So I'm going to share a couple of variations. Plus, I'm going to give you a little extra tip here on how you could keep this and make it as a solid calendar so you could tear off a little sheet. So let's go ahead and get started in the Silhouette Studio software. Now over in the Silhouette Studio software, I'm going to come up to my library. I'm going to use the same exact calendar file, so I'll do a few of the same steps to get started with that. So I'm just going to search calendar 2026. And I'm going to double click on this. It's going to ask me if I want the registration marks automatically added. I don't need those currently at the moment. I'm going to press cancel on that. It's just going to bring that print and cut design. Now, as I explained in the previous video, I'll quickly explain here. You have two parts to this. So you have your graphic image and then you have your cut lines. If I were to move one of these cut lines off of this, we actually don't need those cut lines yet. If I move one of those off, you can see that this calendar has a little bit of gray edges. I'm going to work with that easily. We can still work with that. I'm going to left click and drag across it. Now, if you were to cut this exactly as it is, you probably would not notice that gray line. But for the purpose of what I am doing with it, then I want to remove that gray line so I can easily do that. I'm going to left click, drag across everything to select all of my calendar pieces. Hold my shift key down and I'm going to click on one of the calendar sections. That is going to deselect the graphic on this image. So the only thing selected on my design are those red cut lines. Then I'm going to come over to the right hand side to the offset panel and I'm just going to create a small internal offset. Now it's going to look really large right now because it goes and defaults back to my previous default or previous setting that I was using on my last project. I just need it to come in just a little bit. So I'm going to use that, and you just want to make sure you're not cutting any portion of your year off or anything like that. I'm going to click apply, and then as soon as I do that, it's all individual pieces for that offset. I'm going to press Control G or Command G on a Mac. That is going to group those cut lines all together. So, and if I right click on it to choose group, sometimes it deselects all of those. So this is the easiest way, is to use the keyboard shortcut. Now, then it has that grouping selected. What I can do is I can come in here and I can grab this outer line. These are all separate. So what I want to do is with that, I just hit Control Z to go back. So currently it has my internal offset that's grouped together selected. I'm going to hold my shift key down and click on the graphic or the calendar graphic, and then I can just drag that away. So now you can see this is my original cut lines that are over here. They're all individual cut lines. I'm going to left click, drag across those. I can delete those. I don't need them any longer. On this calendar side, you can see that I have my internal offset that is inside of the calendar edge there. I'm just going to left click and drag across everything, and I'm going to come over to my modify panel. I'm going to choose crop. Now, when you do crop like this, the cut lines are turned off on that design. I don't need the cut lines turned on for this particular part because I'm only going to be printing the calendar. I'm not going to be cutting around the edge of this calendar. So if you do need the cut lines turned on, you would go to the Send tab and choose Cut with your design selected. That's the most important part. So now I can start to work with this design. And I'm going to come over to the left-hand side to my drawing tools, and I'm going to choose Draw a Rectangle. I'm simply going to draw out a rectangle. And you can choose whatever size calendar size you want to create. It's going to make a difference on how tall your easel is that you're using. If you get too tall, it'll tip that easel over. So I have all the supplies that I'm using linked in the video description below as well. But Some things to keep in mind when you're doing that, but you could make a massive calendar out of this. You would want to use a larger graphic than this. When you open these graphics, they are a PNG file or a JPEG file, which is exactly what this is. The calendar graphic portion of it is a set size. So if you try to scale that up, you're going to pixelate it. You can scale it down without usually having any issues, but scaling up on a graphic image you will get that pixelation. Back to our rectangle here, I am simply going to come up to the top quick access toolbar. I'm going to unlock the lock aspect, and I'm going to change this to 2.75, and let's just start out with 3.5. That might not be tall enough, but it might work out perfect. Each one can vary depending on your project. So my numbers may not be the same as your numbers, whatever you decide to do. That is the best part about this, is that I'm showing you the techniques. You take those and expand on those and use your own graphics, use your own calendar style, and you can follow the same steps that I'm sharing. So I'm going to pull over this January in here, and that actually looks like a perfect size for this. I'm going to left click and drag across both of those and then just center this. Align the center and see how that looks. You just want to keep in mind your bottom section here. And then we're going to create the first one, and then you're going to repeat the same steps that I'm sharing for all of the rest of the months. And that's how you get your layered part of this calendar. So I'm going to pull over my folder with some graphics. I'm going to make this and send it with my husband to work. So he doesn't know that yet, but I'm going to stick it in his bag. So these are some fun. I pulled this off of Creative Fabrica, and I'll put that link in the video description below. But if you go to the website and you just type in quirky, you can get some fun images. Now I'm just going to move my Windows folder over, and we'll just choose the first one. Maybe this is January. Okay, so this guy has a little hat. Let's use him. So I do have auto trace turned on in my Silhouette Studio software. So what that means is when I drag over this transparent PNG file, it is going to automatically trace around that outer edge. You do need to be patient with your computer when you do this, because it is tracing it. It is adding that cut data to that file. If you do not have auto trace turned on and you are using a PNG file, you would need to trace it to get the cut line in order to do the next steps. So I'm going to drag this and drop it over here onto my design mat, not in my rectangle, or it will fill my rectangle. And then I can move that off my page. So you can see this is a great size. It came in at a larger size, which is great. I'm actually going to scale it down so I don't have to worry about it, but you can make a larger calendar with this file. So I don't actually need this outer cut edge, except that I need it to make my next offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scale this down. Now, like I said when I first mentioned auto trace, it adds cut data to your file. It adds data exponentially to your file because it is tracing every single piece of that outer edge to give you a cut line, which can make your computer run slower, because when I scale this down, it has to recalculate that cut line all the way down. And it doesn't recalculate it in taking out edit points. If I double click on this, it's going to bring up those edit points. That's a lot of edit points for this chick, because it's not a chick, it's a rooster. Because it's tracing all of those rough edges of this design. So that is a lot of edit points. It actually tells me that there are a total of 5,124 edit nodes around this. I don't actually need the cut line, but if you were going to cut this design, you would want to simplify it a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this up here. But what you'll notice is that a PNG like this can make your computer run. You'll hear it run and process a little bit more. So let's just move this entire file down onto my design mat so we can see it and zoom out a little bit. So now I have this guy here. I am going to, let's scale him down just a little bit more. You decide on the size that you want. And for each one, you can vary it and have your design show up in a little bit different place. You can vary the size. And then as you stack these, we are going to see the chicken show through. it's going to show another peekaboo style. So let's start with this on January. So what I want to do here is get it positioned how I would like it. And before you weld anything, you want to make sure to have a copy of your original because you can't unweld something after the file has been saved. So keep that in mind as you are designing your calendars. In this case, I would probably save this file, which actually I should save right now. I'm going to come up here to File, Save. When I'm recording videos, sometimes that is the thing I forget the most, is to remind people to save, and I forget to save it. Let's see, chicken calendar. This is going to be funny. I think he's going to love it. It's going to take it a minute to save because I have added that PNG, but I can use this as my template file too. So then I would save a separate copy if I wanted to keep this as a template. Okay, with this chicken selected, I'm going to come over to my offset panel. I'm going to choose offset. This is also going to decrease some of the edit points around that. But what I want to do, you can play around with your distance. I'm going to increase my offset. It's going to take a little bit to process. And the only thing I would keep in mind is if you have any of these little inner bits, you may not want those for the cutout, or you may want to keep it. I think I'm good here. My computer's working. I'm going to click Apply. And then I have this offset around my design. What I can come in and do is I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to choose the transparent option. That's just going to turn those red cut lines off so I can kind of see that. Now, before I do anything, I'm going to actually hold my Alt key down and I'm going to drag a copy away so I have an original. And then your next step is going to be selecting the offset, and you're going to hold your Shift key down and select your rectangle, and then we're going to right click and choose Weld. And now I have this graphic image that I can set up as a print and cut. Here is my first calendar page. You're going to repeat the same steps for all 12 months. So with this, I'm going to set up my page so I can show you my setup for the first page. I'm printing on letter size sheet of paper. I'm going to click on the registration marks panel and turn them on. And then I just want to make sure that my design is outside of the crosshatched area. All parts of my design, you don't want your design in the crosshatched area. That is your safety zone for your optical eye to get the best read on those registration marks. I'm going to come over to the Send tab. And then what you can see here is even though I turned those cut lines around the chicken to transparent, they still show up here as it's going to be cut. I'm going to select the entire design, and I'm going to choose Cut Edge. Because that chicken is on top of the offset, it is now going to cut the outer edge of the entire file. So you can see here, it is going to cut all around the offset. I'm going to leave that little section in there because I think it'll be fun to see the colors through it. And then it's going to cut this outer edge here. And it's also going to, it doesn't cut that inner calendar part. Because the cut lines are turned off on that when I do the crop. But if for some reason your calendar is showing with those cut lines around it, you would simply do the same thing. Select everything, choose Cut Edge. The biggest mistake we see here when somebody is trying to change it from cut to cut edge or no cut is that you have to have the design selected on the screen first. If you have nothing selected on the screen, there is nothing to apply the action to, so it's not going to let you choose those options. So now I'm going to set up the rest of my file. I will show a glimpse here of this. I do create on this, I will create as many will fit on this first page, and then I will actually create a second file or third page or fourth page, setting up my print and cut for those specific pages. In case I want to come back to this file and print a duplicate copy, then I have everything set up to print. Plus, if I set it up on a separate page, I'm not moving my design at all. I can actually send it to print the second page while the first one is cutting. So I am saving time having multiple pages for this design file. So here's a look at the finished design on my screen for the first couple months for this calendar. You're going to print out that page, send it to the Silhouette to cut out each of those pages, and then here's a look at the finished design stacked up. Now here's a look at the finished calendar with all the different months. Each month you could, I did not do the perforated on mine, but you could simply take this and put it behind. I'm going to just lay them down so you can see all of the designs. And you can customize this however you'd like for your recipient. Give it as a gift, a fun little unique creation for their desktop. And this one you can personalize. This is his birthday month, so I did one with a little hat on top. I just printed this on a regular cardstock, but you could also print it on photo paper, and then I would cut a backing and adhere that to the backing to give it some stability. But you can either stack them up as they go, so you have a fun little crew all year long. All kinds of designs that you can make with this. Now I have one more tip for you here. It was asked by someone who said they had a fan on their desk. These are individual pages as they are designed, so they are not connected to anything. You could do all kinds of different things. You could punch a hole in it and have it connected by a ring, or there's all kinds of different ways you can do this. But here's another idea. I'm going to come in here. I'm actually going to save this file, and it's going to take it just a little bit. And then what I want to do is, since I did this, I'm going to make a copy. Like in my previous video, I said I have copies of everything all over my design mat. It's always great to have extra copies. I kick myself if I don't make that copy. So with this, you can come in if you wanted to. It is going to increase the height of your design just a little bit. But if you wanted to add a section to the bottom, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this rectangle up here and make a copy of it. So I'm just pulling that copy down. I held down my Alt key. That's a fast way that you can do that. And the reason I did that is because then it is the same width. And what I can do is I can just make this a smaller size, or I can use this quick access toolbar. And let's add a 1/2 inch to this. That'll be about right. So I want to come up here, and I'm going to left click and drag across this whole thing. I'm going to group this together just so I don't move anything off of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up. I want the edges to overlap just a little bit. So I might actually change this to 0.55, just so it's a little bit longer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click and drag across both of these, and I'm going to center align those just so that they come up together. And I want it to be overlapping, so one of the next steps I'm going to do is weld. So objects have to be overlapping in order to weld together. If they are just barely touching each other, it doesn't always weld together. Now before I weld that, there's two things I want to do. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use the line drawing tool. I'm going to hold my shift key down, and I am going to draw a line out here. I'm going to make a dashed line or perforated line that I would be able to then tear off and have the calendar adhesive together at the bottom, and then tear off each month as you go through it. Now, something to caution you on here is if you want to have your layered design, so take January and put it behind December and have those designs still show through, this isn't going to work very well because your height will be different on your calendar. But if you need the calendar to stay together, this is an option. So with my score line selected, I'm going to come over to the line style panel, and I'm going to select the dashed line. And then I have that dashed line. I can set it up, and I can move it up here where I want it. For now, it does look overlapping on that, and that's okay. But I like to set up the line before I actually weld this, and that way that I have the option to change it if I want to. So if I come out here and zoom out, the next step I'm going to do is left click and drag across everything, and I'm going to make a copy because I'm now going to weld. However, you only want the top rectangle which I need to ungroup. Here, and I'll show you why. The images are grouped with my rectangle. If I try to weld the images, if I try to weld this grouping to the bottom rectangle, it goes goofy. So if I choose weld, you end up with this. Because you have those graphics grouped in with your cut lines, it goes goofy. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo it. Easily remedied. I'm going to right click, ungroup, and then I do not want the chicken graphic or the calendar selected. I'm going to click on the outer edge of the rectangle, hold my shift key down, and click on the bottom rectangle. Now I can weld, and it's going to weld that. And then I have this graphic, or this little cut line. You could use your align tools too, but I can easily just nudge it with my keyboard. And now I have that little perforation at the bottom of my calendar. I'm going to group that together. I have the little perforation at the bottom of my calendar that I could tear off. So those are some ideas. One thing leads to another, and you can have one calendar design without the perforation and just have single individual pages, or you could have this perforated design here where you could tear off, and you're just going to simply add some adhesive tape down here at the bottom on each page, on the back side of each calendar page, that you can then stick it together. And so it's not going to fly away off your desk. So those are some options, all kinds of things. If you think of additional ideas, I'd love to hear those in the comments below. Make sure to check out the video description for the supplies I used, as well as additional resources on the tools in the Silhouette Studio software that I mentioned. I hope you have a lot of fun creating your unique and different layered calendars. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.